Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football Podcast. I am John Mackenzie. Joe Devine is dead. Long live the king. But joining me today is Joe Devine.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm dead.
It's been a while.
Well, it's been at least 2 weeks, yeah.
And you are back because you have recorded a very special episode for us.
That's right, John. So what I've done is I've anointed you king of the podcast, and then I've come here to take from you the very first special episode, which is with me. Ruben Pinder joined me as well as a wingman, and we spoke to Peter Crouch this morning, which was actually thoroughly exciting.
Yeah, now that is exciting, and I think you had quite an interesting topic to talk to Peter Crouch about, right?
Yeah, he's made a film. It's called That Peter Crouch Film. It's a documentary. It's on Prime Video. And it's about his career. I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest, when they reached out to us. But they sent us the film, which comes out today, so it's available to watch now. And it's great. It's about adversity, really, and it takes you sort of through Peter Crouch's career, but it does it through the lens of the struggles that he experienced at various different points. And it does really bring home to you, I think, how much he had to put up with as a young player, because he's very tall, he's unusual looking, doesn't look like other footballers. He definitely heard that from the crowd. He definitely heard that from journalists. He heard it all the way through his career until he proved himself as an England first-team player. So like the level that this guy as a footballer had to go to win over the crowd is quite astonishing. And also he experiences adversity from other areas of his life as well, and which the film focuses on. So I speak to him about that for 40 minutes.
Yeah, and I think adversity is something that all footballers face, and they don't often get the chance to talk about it on the level that Peter Crouch has done, both in terms of this film, but also this podcast. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys had to say.
I'm looking forward to you hearing what I had to say, and Peter Crouch, but mainly me.
Right, well, here we go with the episode.
Peter Crouch, welcome to the Tifo Football Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, we're really delighted to have you, and we're here today to talk about a number of things, but part of that will be your film, which is coming out on Prime Video, and it's called That Peter Crouch Film. And do you know what? It's really good, isn't it? Are you proud of it?
I'm incredibly proud of it, yeah. You don't really know, do you? I think you do these things, and obviously there's a lot of other people involved that I didn't see, you know, like we speak to like Sven Goran Eriksson, Harry Redknapp, you know, my old football coach, some of my friends, and you never know. I didn't really have much control over that, you know, whether they say. But I want it to be honest, I want it to be open, and hopefully that's come across.
I mean, the film opens and closes with you questioning whether it's a good idea to make a film or not. Have you, I mean, since you've seen it now, do you feel differently?
No, I feel like it was a good idea, yeah. I'm very proud of it, but at first I was like, well, there's plenty of footballers or people with better careers than me, or you know, when I think of it, I mean, I stay at the start of the film. You know, when you think of these kind of films, you think of like Usain Bolt, you know, AP McCoy, like legends in their field. You know, I did well, but there's people, Brazilian Ronaldo, for instance, Lionel Messi. You know, why? That's the kind of caliber you expect from these kind of documentaries. But then, obviously, when it was explained to me, it was actually like your story's interesting. You know, I look different to normal footballers. I think sometimes I act differently to kind of other footballers, and it's a reasonably interesting story. And you know, having watched it, and all the people that have watched it have said this, you know, a similar thing. So I'm really pleased with it, and glad I've done it now.
Yeah, me too. Well, listen, I think like you said already, it's kind of it's a story of adversity, and I've picked a few quotes from near the beginning of the film that kind of bring that to life. Sam Wallace, the football journalist, said in your film, nothing about him tells you he's a footballer. One of your youth coaches described you as Bambi on ice, and another, whose name I didn't catch, said it wasn't going to happen. Right? So like this sets the stage for you as a young player, and you said already, like, you looked different. You're a tall guy. What was that like as a youth player? Yeah,
well, I think that's the story. I mean, you know, the story of my life in many ways. I mean, I was shaped very early on as you know, in the school kind of playground. It's similar to the terraces in many ways. You know, if you look different, you are kind of, you know, picked on or you know, targeted, if you like. But my way of combating that was always, it helps that you're good at football at school. And I think, you know, I'd combat it through humour. So if someone was going to say something about me, I'd always say it before they did, in a more humorous way than they were going to. And I think that stops it stone dead, right? Yeah. And I think that sort of shaped me as a personality anyway. And I'm still kind of, in my career after football, that's the kind of person I am. And I think that's obviously evident to see. But there were difficult times. And I didn't want this film to be like a sob story of like, oh, please feel sorry for me. But all it was being honest, being kind of making it in the football world and looking the way I did. I didn't look like a footballer there was there was people really trying to knock me down because of that. But there's also people that gave me a chance, even despite that, which I'm very grateful for, because it'd be quite easy for people like Sven with England to not pick me because I didn't look right, and I didn't fit the mould of what an England footballer should look like. Yeah. So credit to him, really, because he got a bit of flack for picking me in the first place, and thankfully it worked out. But he could have got a lot of stick for it.
When you watch the film back, or maybe this is part of participating in the film and answering the questions as part of your interview, like I think a lot of the time, lots of people suffer and struggle with adversity of various different forms, but sometimes it's not really that clear to the person what that looks like in the fullest sense until they tell somebody else or they watch themselves like talking through it. So when you watch the film, do you sort of feel the scale of what you were up against as a young player? How does it make you feel, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm in such a different place now where, people respect me as a footballer. People know, who I am, and generally I can go back to the clubs that I've played for, and it's always, quite a nice welcome and things like that. Obviously when I was starting out, I was ridiculed really for looking the way I did. That was hard. But because football's kind of this, I think the world's changed now a little bit more. But sort of when I was coming through, it was very much, very macho kind of industry where you don't show any weakness. And I think that's what football is in general, right? If you show a small window of weakness, that's preyed upon, right? And I'm talking in the dressing room, when you're, by your managers, by the parents. It's one of those industries. And I went in with my eyes open, I know that that's a harsh environment. And I was totally fine with that, I could cope with it. But it's still, when you're kind of an impressionable 13, 14, 15-year-old lad, that can be quite hard to take. And it was difficult at times. And I didn't speak to anyone. Like you say, what was that like for me? I wouldn't have told anyone, none of my mates, none of my family.
Well, there's a scene in the film where you show your wife, Abby, you're looking through some old headlines and pieces that were written about you of some really unpleasant stuff, and you're sort of laughing at it as you read through. She's seeing it, and you mentioned that she's seeing it for the first time, and she's horrified. She's upset, visibly upset in that scene. And obviously, on the one hand, there's it's interesting to me that she obviously would have that reaction, but also that maybe you hadn't really I'm sure she knew that had happened to you, but maybe you hadn't really ever had a conversation that deep about it before.
Not once have I discussed her and said listen. It was only because I was doing this film that this stuff came up. This is something that it was a difficult time, but there's no point. I don't need. I'm through that now. I don't need to tell her about the dark times that I had. It's. But yeah, her mind was blown. She was like, how can people write this stuff? And the way she's seeing that for the first time reminded me of my mum at the time. Because she was involved in it, right? So she had to stop buying newspapers. We stopped watching a lot of the football kind of television on football, football on television. Not the games, because obviously the games are the games, and that, if I wasn't playing, it was fine to watch. But stuff like kind of talk shows or anything to do with football, really, like even Match of the Day. When I was going through that spell at Liverpool without scoring, it was hard for my mum to take. If she was at the games and she heard things as well, then it wasn't such for me. I put myself in that position, and I was there.
You were a kid, right?
But I'm a professional footballer now, and I expect grief from that's part and parcel of the job. I think that's the way I was looking at it. But my mum didn't need to hear it, and I'd always think of when people were saying things, I would always think of my mum. I think not worried about me, because I put myself out here, but my mum didn't sign up for that, you know.
Yeah. Your mum's not in the documentary.
No, I mean she's she was amazing, like career-wise for me, like I say, ferrying me around to take me to Tottenham for a meeting, and if anyone's been on the North Circular at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not a fun place to be.
No.
Going to White Hart Lane every Tuesday and Thursday, but my dad was very much, it was like me and my dad at the football, so obviously he was the one that was always going to be featured.
Yeah, well, your dad features quite heavily in the film, and it's interesting. It's like, it made me think actually, one of the main themes that I think this film had. Have you seen Whiplash? Yeah. Do you like that film?
I love it, yeah.
So for the benefit of the audience, Whiplash is a film about a music student, jazz drummer, and his teacher. And his teacher has a very unconventional and like quite aggressive methods to teach him. And the film, basically, the central question of the film is like, is what the teacher hypothesizes correct or not? And what the teacher thinks is that you have to be like this in order to create legends. If a student, even if they were really talented, if they couldn't live up to the pressure, then they were never intended to be a legend, right? And obviously that's a very extreme example of that sort of theme. But that's really interesting to me because I feel like you can see that across all sorts of different industries, and football is one of them as well. We hear lots of stories about footballers who have super supportive parents who really push them hard, and I think there's also there's a tendency sometimes to kind of, for footballers who've become successful, to look back and think, well, this was a situation I was in, and therefore that led to success equals like it was the right thing to do. This is something that comes up in your film because your dad, while he's nothing like J.K. Simmons' character from Whiplash, your dad was hard on you as a kid, and it was clear that at times you found that difficult. What was that like? And when you reflect on it now as a parent as well, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't be here without my dad, right? And I know obviously Dad did a Whiplash film, like you say, it's obviously a very heightened version of what my dad was. But my dad was brilliant with me, right, from a really young age. You know, it was all about enjoyment. It was about playing with a smile on your face. It was, we'd go in the garden and we'd play games, and he'd give me little tasks to do. He'd go to work and he'd do, I was 9, 10, do 20 keepy-ups. And if you beat that, it was like a prize. I'd come home and I'd go, Dad, I got 30. And he'd come out to the garden, I'd do 30 for him. Then it was 50, then it was 100. Then it was, then it was just constantly working on my ability, and it was always enjoyable. Yeah. And then obviously I get to like 13, 14, and things become a little bit more, and he realised that I had a chance. I had not a gift, but I had a skill set that would potentially make me a professional footballer. And he knew that's all I wanted to be. So all he did was hone in on that. And he was hard on me at times. But he was just realising my dream, and I thank him every single day. Like the way you asked me about how I look back on it, fondly. And there were times where, obviously, you get back in the car after the game. There's always the same question when I play badly. How do you think you played? Yeah. And that was the question where I was like, well, not very well if he's saying that. If I get back in the car, it's like, oh, well done today. It's always the silence first, and if you speak to, I reckon, the majority of footballers, whose dads were involved in their football career at a young age, most of the players, dads or guardians, people around them, were hard on them. And I think because you can lose your way, I think it's, as you probably know, I think a kid who's 15 to kind of 21, there's so many kind of pitfalls, distractions. Yeah. I was probably the most dedicated of my whole life between 15 and 21. And that was down to my dad. And I'm reaping the rewards of that dedication every single day now. Yeah. And I think what I'll try and instill in my kids, maybe I won't be as hard on them as maybe my dad was at times, but I'll still try and instill that kind of belief and that kind of work ethic during that period, as hard as it is for them to kind of not get distracted by what everyone else is doing. I still think it's such an important time, and whatever kind of business or trade you get into, if you can concentrate in those years when a lot of people are losing their way, you've got a leg up on a lot of percentage of kids in that position.
Yeah. What about this though? If I were to say, You were an extremely successful Premier League footballer, right? And now you're a national treasure. It's really worked out for you, Peter Crouch, right?
Yeah, no.
Let's be honest. You're having a great time, and we're all delighted that you are. If you hadn't been a successful footballer, if you'd showed talent at the age that you did, that your father saw in you, that other adults saw in you as well, and they'd tried in their best possible way to nurture that, but that was difficult for you and it hadn't worked out for you, as it does for so many young players, do you think you'd be sitting here and looking back on, reflecting on that, and do you think you would feel differently about it? Or do you, how much, I guess what I'm saying, do you think your success biases your opinion?
Yeah, no, I think it probably does. But I still would have rather have, that shot at it.
Yeah.
And having that kind of guidance. So many kids don't have that,
Yeah.
I feel blessed that I've had that. I had a dad that cared,
Yeah. Well, it was there.
that wanted his son, was involved, number one, but he knew my goal was to try and plenty of footballers, and I know footballers that didn't make it. So I can tell you from experience, I speak to them and they're like, their dad was probably just as harsh as mine, and they didn't make it, but they're still thankful that they had a shot at that. They had, their dad gave them that opportunity to try.
Yeah.
And I suppose you can instill those values in other areas as well. Like if you move on to something that isn't football, you still learn the same things that are valuable later in life. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, it's little things like my dad would let me make my own decisions, and he would go, I'll go, there's a party on Friday night, and I'm 17 years old, right? And I've got a game the next day. I said, everyone's going, the whole school's going, I'm going to go, and he's like, yeah. He goes, you go. He said, do you think all the lads tomorrow, do you think they're going to parties? And I'd be like, well, probably not, no. And he'd go, yeah, just something to think about.
And would you go?
And I'd be like, bollocks. He's got me. And then
that he's right.
I wouldn't go, but then he'd allow me to think it was my decision. So I'd be thinking, because you know what kids are like, it's like, no, you got to make your own decisions. I'm an adult now. And he just puts seeds of doubt in my mind, and then I'd end up, just concentrating on the football. And I think that was a great way of parenting.
Bearing all that in mind, he also stuck up for you quite a lot when you were going through that period of getting quite a lot of stick in the press, and he confronted a journalist. Was that during the 2006 World Cup? You mentioned that in the film. What did he say?
Oh my God. I don't know if I've ever mentioned who it was, but I'm not going to about to now. But he basically, it was descriptive words in all the kind of written press. I mean, and there was a thing, I think it's a lot different now, but it was very much kind of us v them, if you know what I mean. It was a golden generation of England footballers that were billed as kind of overpaid, not winning anything, too much hype surrounding them, that kind of thing. And then obviously it was very much kind of, that's the press's angle, and then ours was like, well, if they're going to say that about us, we won't talk to them. And it felt like it was just a clash constantly. So yeah, I mean, he was not happy about some of the descriptive language that was used about me. It was never Peter Crouch, right? It was always lanky hitman, beanpole striker, lanky target man, always a descriptive word that went before my name. So my dad just had enough of it one day, and you got to remember, we're in Baden-Baden, obviously, and somehow the players' families got put in the same hotel as the press, right? So this is
which would not happen now,
where the carnage ensued. And you got to remember, the journalists at that time obviously were quite nasty about the players. So the players' families, obviously, there was a lot of in that hotel. I mean, if you'd have been a fly on the wall in that hotel, it would have been it's a documentary for the ages, that one. And anyway, my dad just pulled one of the journalists that was consistently saying negative things about me in the press, and I don't know how am I going to put this. I don't know how I'm allowed to swear on this.
Yeah.
Well, so he said, how would you like it if I said that fat before your name every time? And he said, I wouldn't particularly like it. And he said, well, stop saying about my son then. And he went, well, and he actually never really thought about what he was writing, and that people's families were reading it. And I think also in that hotel in Baden-Baden, actually a lot of the families got across their point to a lot of the journalists that were being so negative about the footballers, and actually, I think, humanised it, if you know what I mean. That made it actually, what you're writing is about human beings, and because quite often I think it's something football is seen as a great job. You know, you're just incredibly highly paid for it.
Yeah.
It's like we can say what we like because of that.
The answer is often that, well, they've put themselves in that position.
Yeah.
They're earning all this money. Like, you know, they're fair game. They're open to scrutiny,
Exactly.
which I don't really think is
Well, I think
reasonable.
as the player, yeah, because you know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just it's the families, like
Yeah.
it's my mum, it's whoever's mum it is, or you know, they take it harder.
Yeah, for sure. From one father figure to another, Harry Redknapp, who it features fairly heavily in this film as well. Your other dad, yeah. It's the first question I want to ask you about Harry Redknapp is, you know, for a long time there was a very basic joke, which is that wherever Harry Redknapp went, he was going to buy Peter Crouch. And
Jermaine Defoe to go with him.
And Jermaine Defoe.
And Nico.
That's
Nico.
true, yeah. I mean, there's a whole host of these films. But one of the things I loved the most about this film is are the scenes that involve you and Harry Redknapp, right? And I felt like it added so many layers of context to that sort of basic meme. And I can completely understand not only why Harry Redknapp would want you to play for him, but why you would want to play for Harry Redknapp. Like, will you just talk to me a little bit about that relationship? Because he seemed like someone who just believed in you from the offset.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I got from Harry. And I think, you know, obviously in the film we talked about my time at Southampton, because that was the key moment for me and Harry, I think. Because when I first arrived, he came in as director of football when I was at Portsmouth at 19. It was Graham Ricks that originally signed me, with Milan Mandaric as chairman. And Harry came in as director of football. And the first thing he ever did when I met him for the first time was sell me. So, you know, people think, he always buys me. He sold me like 2 or 3 times as well. You know, so the first one was Portsmouth. I went to Villa. You know, they got quite a lot of money for me in those days. So I moved on to Villa, and then obviously since then he came in at Southampton, and this was the real important part of my career, because I don't know where I'd be without that time at Southampton with Harry. Because I'd been to Villa and it didn't work out for me. I had to drop back down. I say back down, I mean still a Premier League side to Southampton. I went on loan to Norwich, and I was thinking maybe I'm a Championship player. I mean, that's genuinely my thought process. I thought I had the ability, but my body wasn't. I hadn't sort of caught up really. I wasn't ready for the Premier League till I was 23. I turned 23 at Southampton, and I wasn't playing. I had obviously James Beattie and Kevin Phillips, like 2 fantastic centre forwards, were playing ahead of me. And then James Beattie got sold to Everton. I thought that's my chance. But then Paul Sturrock got stacked and Steve Wigley took over, and he was part of the youth team, and he was bringing through like Leon Best and Dexter Blackstock, and they were playing ahead of me. And I was on the bench, and I was thinking, oh my God, like this is my final shot at the Premier League really, and I'm nowhere near it. I'm miles off it. And then Steve Wigley got sacked. Harry comes in, and then that's you know, I never looked back. Literally.
But what was it about his management that allowed you to click back into form?
Yeah, the first thing he said to me was, "Why are you not playing?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, that's absolutely ridiculous." He said, "You will start if you're fit. You'll start. You and Kevin Phillips will start every single game till the end of the season, and you'll score the goals to get us out of trouble." Well, we were already in a lot of trouble. And I scored 16 goals after Christmas.
04-05?
Yeah, and I went from being, am I a Championship player, to signing for the European champions, Liverpool, just after Istanbul, and making my England debut. Yeah. Like in half a season. And like that's the influence that he had on me. And I'm saying that obviously that player was in there anyway. It just needed someone to believe in it to get it out, and that's what I got from Harry. And obviously since then, we worked together at Portsmouth, at Tottenham, because I always did well for him, and he was always brilliant with me. You know, we had that relationship, and he knew how to get the best out of me. So it always worked.
Because football management is a complex thing, but sometimes it can be that simple, right? Like especially if you're a striker who depends on confidence to play in front of goal, and like. Bearing that in mind, do you think Harry Redknapp nowadays kind of gets a little bit of an unfair rap. Like, he's not quite given the credit he deserves for how good he was as a manager, because he wasn't necessarily like a tactical innovator, but he was a brilliant man manager by the sounds of things.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head there. Like, the thing with Harry Redknapp is he would simplify everyone's game to the point, and he's a great people person. He knows how to operate, and he'd simplify everyone's game. And like you say, like tactically, but that's only half the job. Like Rafa Benitez was probably one of the best managers I ever worked with tactically, but around people, not anywhere near Harry. He wouldn't understand kind of people's feelings, or who how to simplify people's game. When I say simplify people's games, I remember Wilson Palacios possibly being one of the best midfielders in the country at Tottenham at the time, and Wigan before that. And all Harry used to say to him was like, do what you're good at, and that was, you go and hunt the ball down, you go and win it back, and you give it to Luka Modric. It's a simple, but effective way of playing, and similar to me. And if I'm in the team, it's like, we've got to get crosses in. We've got to hit him early. There's different ways of playing, and he was fantastic at that. And the biggest compliment I could pay to Harry is, I think he would be just as good a manager, at a non-league team as he would in charge of England or Manchester City. I don't think many managers could say that. I think there's managers who can manage kind of top level players who couldn't manage at a lower level. Whereas I think he could manage the whole way through the Football League. And I also think he can manage at the top level. I think he would have been a great England manager because he deals with people, egos, personalities, and he can bring that all together.
Well, there's a moment in the film when you're playing golf with him in the rain. It hasn't really worked. And you thank him, I think, essentially for everything that you've just said. And it's not clear to me, I'm sure you've had those sorts of conversations before, and like there's an element of, there's a lot of cameras filming you, and it's a bit uncomfortable. It's like his body language when you do that, he kind of eschews the thanks straight away. It's like he accepts it verbally, but he's a bit uncomfortable that you're doing it. And I wonder, like, I know I've asked you on here and I keep trying to get you to talk about your feelings, but when you try to have conversations like that with people in football, it sometimes seems like that there is an element of masculinity to the tone of those conversations. And one of the things I find sweeter than like anything else is watching two football men try to have an emotional conversation. And it's like there are not many words involved, and you can see the meaning there, but like it's almost like he doesn't know how to accept what you're saying, but you can see that he feels it, right? Is that the impression that you get from that conversation? Would you have a different one if cameras weren't there? Am I way off the mark? Or
no, you're spot on. Like that kind of, like I felt like a bit of a knob saying thank you, and then he felt like a knob just trying to receive that compliment. You know what I mean? So we both went like, I was like, thanks Harry for everything, and he was like, shut up, you idiot. And I was like, well, if we hadn't have been on camera doing this film, we wouldn't have even mentioned it. I'd have just said, Harry got horse running today, and he'd have gone, and we'd have just discussed it like that. But I think that's kind of like how a lot of men operate anyway. I think you go down the pub and you don't even ask any questions about how you're feeling, or how's the family. You just talk about, do you think that fly's going to win up the wall against that other one? But that's the kind of, you just slip straight back into kind of ridiculous conversations. But, I genuinely believe that about Harry. Like he was brilliant with me, and still is to this day. I still get to speak to him every now and then. And I know the old joke about obviously Harry always signing me and Jermaine and Nico. But you know what Harry did? Because he knew the players that he trusted, and he knew players who were going to deliver for him. And I like to think, I was one of them. Yeah.
Well, I think whether it's sort of in the text or not, like it's clear from that moment, it's like dripping with male meaning. So I really enjoyed that. Simon, how are we doing for time, by the way? We're okay, yeah? Fine. Do you want to ask some of your emergency questions?
Sure, yeah. During the 2006 World Cup, Pep Guardiola wrote a column in a Spanish newspaper, and he wrote about you. Are you aware of?
I am aware of it. Yeah, someone sent me this.
I'll read out a small passage, just so we don't waste time. But he says, with Crouch, you have to play for Crouch, and don't turn your nose up at that. Playing to him means a lot. He gives a lot, and then he goes on to elaborate on how good you were at bringing other players into play. Do you think you'd be a good Pep Guardiola player?
Do you know what? Like obviously, like with like now that we're starting to, not starting, but he's one of the greatest managers who's ever walked this planet, right? Plays, he's changed the kind of the dynamic or the way we think about football. That's how good he is. And to hear those comments was really it was quite eye-opening for me, and obviously I feel really proud of it. I think he was talking about, I think it might have been the 2006 World Cup. I think he was talking about me, and he was just saying, how you could play the ball into me, and I could bring others. It's not just about obviously being tall and things like that. And I think he recognised how much the team could get out of playing with me and into my feet. And I obviously am very, very grateful for that. To come from someone like that he obviously rates me as a player, number one, is and number two, that could I play for Pep Guardiola? Yeah, I like to think I could, because I think I adapted to pretty much all the teams I played for. I mean, there were times that towards the end where I was becoming kind of the stereotype of what people thought I should be in the first place, where I was kind of at Stoke or at Burnley, where it was very much kind of long ball, and I was using my head a lot more than I did. But then I played at Tottenham in a team with Van der Vaart, Luka Modric, Gareth Bale, Aaron Lennon.
Some good service there, isn't it?
Well, but the most of that was on the floor, and that was at Liverpool, with Gerrard and Alonso and Mascherano. So I'd like to think that I could adapt to kind of any situation, and I think even with England as well, if you think about the players we had there, we weren't launching the ball up to me. A lot of it was controlled, a lot of it was through my feet, and a lot of it was through midfield or drop deep, or I'd play on the angle, but you could play into my chest. You'd take the press out of the game, drop it into my chest, and we'd just play from higher up. We'd still play football, but we'd just play, we'd be in the final third quicker, and we'd be able to play passes from there, and we've taken out so many players. So I'd like to think I could adapt to most styles of football, and I could hold my own in a Guardiola team. Would I get in a team now? Probably not. But I'd like to think that I could have played for one of his teams. Yeah.
You don't think you'd displace Haaland from the bench?
Last 10-15 I'd come on. Once he's got his hat-trick, I could nick a brace probably in that team.
Talk about eating the crumbs on the table.
I'll take them.
Yeah. Your robot dance, by the way, this is another thing I loved about the film. I never thought about your robot dance in this way before. I just thought it was
I can break it down for you.
a fun dance, and I'm not going to ask you to do it. But what I really loved about this is that the film sort of explores the idea that your robot dance is actually like a symbol of your emerging confidence, which I had never considered that before. I just thought it was like a guy doing a silly thing. Will you talk to me about that idea a little bit?
Yeah, well, you know what? Like, it's obviously, to me, it's a huge thing. But like you say, it is just an odd-looking fella doing a ridiculous dance when he's done something great. That's what it should be. But actually, like, it symbolised something. It was, like I said before, right? You have the press, like, kind of, and who were very kind of anti-England team at that time, and the England team who were very kind of, and it was like us and them, right? And then for some reason, this ridiculous kind of dance kind of turned like quite an aggressive press. So like all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is great. We all love this. And everyone got involved. I remember seeing in the Times there was a pull out of how to do it. I was on CNN and it was body poppers in New York telling me what I was doing wrong. And it lifted the mood, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And Sven, I always remember it. Sven he came in over to me and he was like, this robot. And I thought he was going to say, like, come on, like, it's about the football. We need to stop this now. And he was like, this is great. And he said, whenever you score, you have to keep doing it. And I was like, right. Because Sven was getting a lot of heat. Do you remember? It was all like, there was a fake shake involved. There was, we were talking about Aston Villa or whatever it was. And it seemed to be he was on the front page every week. And he was like, this stuff is great. Like, just keep distracting them with this stupid dance. Yeah. So it actually kind of helped that kind of process. And you see now with Gareth Southgate and what they've built, like, it's a really harmonious situation where it looks Club England, But it very much wasn't like that when we played.
That's something that people talk about a lot with the England team, is comparing that era, like that you played in sort of 2006 to 2010, and now
the golden generation.
And the contrast in kind of like vibe and atmosphere between the players, because like Harry Kane and Bukayo Saka the other day were celebrating together at Old Trafford. Now, with the kind of quote unquote golden generation, the perceived wisdom is that the players from different clubs were very cliquey and didn't really speak to each other. Was it actually that kind of segregated, or could you sense that when you were there?
You could sense it, 100%. When I look at England now, I don't see Saka, an Arsenal player, and I don't see Kane, a Tottenham player. I see two England players enjoying a goal, and I didn't even think of that till you just said it. Whereas if I saw Gary Neville jump on Steven Gerrard's back after a goal, I'd be like, That's a weird one, but I actually think the Premier League was better for it, but England suffered because of it. So I felt like the Premier. I wanted to see two teams that hate each other in the Premier League go to war. I want to see Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher have a 50-50. I want to see the Arsenal v United games that we used to see.
There were some amazing battles.
The Chelsea Liverpool kind of semi-finals in the Champions League. That kind of hatred and bitterness, and that's what football's about. It's tribalism, right? I loved that, and I think it was the detriment of England. So I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? I mean, we don't want to see teams swapping shirts at half time in a North London derby, but then we do want to see Saka and Kane celebrating at the World Cup. So, where's the
it's
a
bit of a double-edged sword.
Speaking of battles, we can't let you go without talking about the greatest Premier League goal ever scored in history, which was scored by you. How did you feel when you watched Papa Cisse score that same season? Were you devastated?
This wrangles with me, and still to this day, and I don't know how long ago it is. It's probably like 12 years or something. But how Cisse's beat me to goal of the season that year.
I don't know either.
He's hit a banana shot at Stamford Bridge. That went to be fair, it was a great goal. I'll give him it.
It's the camera angle for that one. I think that's where yours is let down, because you're right behind it and you see the movement of the ball, and that it just does things to you when you watch that. Whereas I think there's more technique in what you've done. I think it's clearly the superior goal. That is, of course, until Cisse comes to do the podcast, in which case, obviously, we'll say that one's better. But I think the technique in yours is superior.
Well, I just feel like it's been thought about. You know what I mean? Like I've popped it up and then volleyed it. And I tried it at Blackburn the week before. I remember Paul Robinson saying the exact same thing. It drops and I popped it up and volleyed it. But anyone who knows me knows that I do that I don't do that every single day.
Sure.
But I try it every single day. Like I just loved volleying. As a kid, I was like obsessed with kind of like Hugo Sanchez, Gianluca Vialli, players who could Van Basten, players who could volley a ball. Right?
It's the best type of goal.
I just loved it. I was obsessed with it.
How many misses is that goal worth to you?
I'd have missed one a game my whole career to get that one. I think.
Fair enough. It is absolutely outstanding, isn't it?
It's nice to look back on.
So cool to have that.
We tried to recreate it once. It didn't work.
So have I since, and it didn't work either.
Right, so have you got anything else to ask, or should we finish up with some word association?
Yeah, let's do word association.
Are you happy to do word association?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay, how this works, and this is called word association and or cynical unoriginal ploy to get a social clip out of this podcast and see how it works, based entirely on your fame and nothing to do with us. But let's see how it goes. I'm going to say, these are mostly player names to you. I'm going to say a player name to you, and then you can just say one word. Ideally. You could, if you need to say a sentence, if you feel compelled to say a sentence, feel free. But just try and do it as quickly as possible. And we'll cut out the ones that are unpublishable. Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty simple.
Emil Heskey.
Assists.
Yeah, that's the right word. That's the word I had in my head as well, in the taxi on the way here. Wayne Rooney.
Oh, I've got so many words. I've got so many. Genius.
Yeah, fair enough. I liked Poir as well at the beginning, though. That's noises are permitted in this game.
I really got on with him with England, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was going to go with his personality.
Fine.
You know, because obviously everyone knows how good he is as a player, and it was easy for me to say genius. But no one, like, he kept, the England squad was made by him, you know what I mean? He kept people together. And
there's that bit in the film where you do that kind of mock interview with somebody's filmed it on like a really old camera or whatever. And you can see his personality coming out there.
Brilliant, you know, and I think sometimes he's guarded around like interviews and things like that, but brilliant around the England camp.
If you need to make a noise instead of saying a word, that's also permitted.
Oh,
so
okay.
just to let you know, that's fine. Nico Kranjčar.
Underrated.
Yeah, for sure, right? You'd have to agree with that.
Yeah.
Van der Vaart.
Partner.
Yeah? What do you mean by partner?
My partner.
Okay.
Me and him just clicked.
Yeah, you really did.
The moment he came, even in training, the first day, he just got my game, and you know, he got mine, I got his. It was a good partnership.
Really shock transfer as well, wasn't it? He came from Real Madrid. Yeah.
Luka Modric.
Beautiful.
No, fair.
You've already said genius. Though.
Yeah, beautiful. No, I never saw him give the ball away.
Yeah.
Not even in training.
Yeah. He also does have incredible hair.
Oh, what a beautiful man. And what a great fella.
Incredible, yeah. What is he, 37 now, still playing?
Yeah. Great fella as well. Great guy. All the Croatian boys were.
Oh, that's good to know. Gareth Bale.
Galactico?
Yeah.
What was he like to play with? I mean, obviously he was brilliant.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I was there at that kind of period of like, he was not doing well at all, and he was going to go to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, and there was that curse, wasn't there?
Because he couldn't. He was playing left back. It's like playing Cristiano Ronaldo right back.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to get exposed every now and then, and that's what happened to him. And then he's watching his rise was just, it was great.
That inter-tie where you linked up
Mike on and that whole like the hat trick in the San Siro, and then it's like watching that kind of shy little like left back, then into watching someone just control games. It was just just watching that rise. It was brilliant.
Very cool. Fabio Capello.
Harsh.
Yeah?
Yeah. Harsh.
Fair enough. Jermaine Defoe.
Greedy.
Do you think you'd have more goals?
He's class. Yeah. You know, guy he could have passed a few times.
Harry Redknapp.
What, one word?
You can have more if you want, but I'd like to hear one. I'll take a noise.
Say a noise.
Yeah, make a noise about Harry Redknapp.
Make a noise about Harry Redknapp.
Yeah.
Terrific.
There you go. It's the perfect combo of the two. Fine, then we'll do one modern day player.
Yeah.
Kevin De Bruyne.
Passing. Yeah. What a passer as well. Like that, it's just beautiful. I remember I was on the bench at Stoke, and I think they beat us 7-2. Yeah. And I was on the bench. Thankfully, I didn't get on. And I
remember that game. He was 17, 18. He was an absolute joke.
Of pass.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. When he came off, obviously, I'm on the bench, but I'm at the Etihad, and I remember standing up. So everyone stood up, standing ovation when he came off, and obviously I forgot that I was like on the bench. So I stood up and I was like, oh fuck, I'm playing the other team. That's how good it was. Forgot where I was.
Yeah, lovely. Well, listen, that Peter Crouch film, I think it came out today, didn't it, on Prime Video? Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Yeah, because you know what, I'm proud of it, and you know, I want people to see it. So hopefully they will, because I think they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. Seeing a new side of you that I think everybody presumed existed, but in the existing media that you do on telly or on your own podcast, you don't often see that kind of vulnerability. So that comes through a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I would also say that there are a lot of football documentaries, and this is a valuable addition to that roster. So I would encourage people to go and see it. Also, you got another Crouch Fest coming up, haven't you?
Yeah.
When's that?
That's 4th of November. Thanks for asking, but it's our favourite time of the year, where we just have a big party at Wembley Arena, and tickets on sale on the 30th of June. But people buy tickets and they have no clue what to expect, and thankfully they come, and hopefully it'll be just like last year.
Yeah, super. Well, listen, Peter Crouch, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.